not post. So let's redo it. Okay. So here, let me help you with it. Actually, wait. I did this live and it did not post. So here, let me actually do it again. I remember what I said though. I remember what I said though. So that's what matters. So, okay. So discrimination. So first things first. Okay. Let me be clear. I'm not a religious person, but I respect people's like reasoning behind why they are religious, right? I understand what religion is intended to provide to people, right? So when we talk about like discernment, first I want to actually give like an actual definition of it, right? So with discernment, essentially what it is it's intended to like facilitate intentionality in your decision making by way of like utilizing sound mind, good reasoning, all of these different things, right? However, what a lot of people don't know is that discernment can also actually mean discrimination, right? And the reason I think it's important that we talk about discernment is because sometimes people may not realize that they're actively participating in their own discrimination because they're choosing to like maybe not speak to certain things or advocate about certain things they feel they want to advocate about, right? So, in my experience, right, here's what I want to say. I think it's important, first of all, for people to understand their individuality, right? Because individuality is very important, right? And then on top of that is there are certain things that are required before you even get to discernment, right? And I'm going to tell you why, right? So the things that I'm referring to would be things like understanding and knowing how to exercise emotional intelligence, um, knowing what it is that you need to do on a day-to-day basis to be at a state of equilibrium and have a sound mind. um Also, what else is very important? These are just examples. This is the only thing, okay? So number three would be um just to give a third example of things that would be necessary, knowing how to validate yourself and why that's important, right? And that isn't even everything that would need to be addressed before you get to discernment, right? That isn't even everything, okay? um the reason why I personally feel like these are things that would need to be addressed prior to getting to discernment is because that helps you to recognize what it is that you could potentially be discriminated about. And it also helps you to build up your confidence. It also helps you to know how to actively do things or choose things that will contribute to your evolution or contribute to you being in a certain state of mind, right? Like I said, having a sound mind, okay? Because here's the thing, and I could give a very like superficial example when I'm talking about like discrimination, right? Of course, it would be things like beauty or whatever, right? We could do that too, right? So let's say if maybe you have a list or you have a gap, or let's say if maybe you have something on your face that you feel subconscious about, or maybe you feel you want to get braces, whatever it is, okay? If you haven't like done certain work on yourself and or like basically work with yourself on yourself for yourself to be the best self, right? By the time you get to discernment, you may not realize that you could be actively participating in that discrimination against yourself, right? Because again, like I said, work like working on your self-confidence or knowing how to validate yourself. If you're concerned about like your physical appearance, then and not in a physical appearance way where it's like, oh, this person feels like they need to be done up all the time. No, like in the most basic sense, right? Because there's nothing wrong with you wanting to put your best foot forward in regard to presentation. That's something that everybody should want to do. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm talking about things that make you you, your unique things, right? So that's why I said things like a lisp, or different things that may be different on your face, or maybe you have a raised mole on your actual face and you feel some type of way about that. Maybe just anything. Think the things that make you you. Not saying that everybody doesn't deserve the right to put their best foot forward as far as presentation. That's not what I'm saying, right? And that's just a superficial example of why the work before getting to discernment is important, because you may not realize that you're participating in your own discrimination. You get what I'm saying? Um, I think also it's important to do that work, because I can also give you like another example. Let's say if you are with work, right? Let's say you don't have experience talking to a CEO. Let's say you don't have any experience sitting down in front face to face with a CEO, right? But you do have experience with working business to business. Maybe you do have experience being flown out by a business or a company that you work for, and sitting and talking with people about the business. You understand what I'm saying? So if you haven't done that work, right, by the time something comes up and a person at the job may be like, hey, we're looking to do this, this, and this. We want to be able to do this, and we want to move this way. You probably will have said, hey, I don't even know if I'm, capable, or I have the skill set to even deliver like I'm supposed to, because I ain't never talked to no CEO. I ain't never sat across from a CEO, especially like a Fortune 500 company or something like that. Now, I've done this type of work, but I've done that, right? So you may tell yourself, my skills ain't gonna transfer over, right? So you thinking you're exercising discernment and saying, hey, maybe that isn't for me. Maybe I don't need to do it, when really you're participating in your own discrimination. Okay. Really, you're participating in your own discrimination. Okay. Because let me let y'all know something. All right. You should be going out for everything. Listen, if they can do it, you can do it too. Anyway, so another example that I want to say, right, is like even in dating. So there are some women who will be like, I'm going to use discernment on this first date. I'm not going to ask certain questions. I'm going to keep it light. I'm going to da da da, right? If you've done the work, right, on yourself before you got to discernment, right, then you know what boundaries are, right? You know how to communicate in a way where it is not offensive, where it's not aggressive, it's assertive. You understand what I'm saying? If you've done the work and you know all of these components before you get to discernment, you know that you can ask the things that you need to ask, right? To even make sure that you're even this person's type, okay? Because that be the thing. Some people just be like, I'm not even going to ask this, I'm not gonna ask that, and you not even asking the right stuff, and it's the first day, it's a feeler, and you might not even know if you're even that person's type, because you're choosing to not ask certain things because you're utilizing discernment. Come on now, like, and again, there's nothing wrong with discernment. I think discernment is a beautiful thing. What I'm saying is that there's work that is required before you get to discernment, because you want to make sure that you are not like choosing to stifle your voice or stifle your perspective. So that's why I said it's certain things that need to be addressed prior to getting to that, because if you are intentionally working to be a well-rounded person, you'll know that it's important for you to have conversation with people who may disagree with you, or regularly consume like things that will help to increase like your critical thinking skills, or help you to see things from like a different perspective, right? And the reason why I also say like boundaries are so important to learn before you even get to discernment, right, is because you want to make sure you're not giving too much, right? Because remember, in discernment, it's all about like, should I speak to or should I not speak to, right? And if you haven't even gotten to the point of addressing boundaries, you'll find that maybe you're giving more than what's being given back, and there isn't that equilibrium, or maybe something needs to be capped off, but you're so heavy into discernment, right, that you're discriminating against yourself and you being able to get ahead, right? And not realizing that there may be some things that probably need to be addressed in regard to the boundary department. Okay? That's why I said it's stuff that needs to be done before you get to discernment, okay? And again, another thing too is like that individuality part. Like, I love, again, like I said, I'm very much for anything that actually is used with, its intent. And what I meant by that is like religion is meant to provide people with a moral compass, for them to have something that keeps them grounded in their reality and being able to help them make sense of the world, right? That's what the intent is, right? However, things can be perceived differently from person to person. So that's why it's important, again, to do that work in addressing your individuality, knowing your experience, and knowing how it can be different from the next person. which then that flows into what? Emotional intelligence. You see why it's so much work that needs to be done prior to getting to that, and why that is important, and why it's very much relevant. It's very much relevant, okay? So I do have a few blog posts. I know I have one about 8 ways to process your emotions. I have one about intrinsic versus extrinsic goals. I also have another blog post where I talk about like handling traumatic experiences and different stuff like that. Because one thing I've noticed too is more often than not, sometimes people actually, heavily rely on discernment because of maybe an immense amount of chaos or some form of like trauma that they could have experienced. You understand what I'm saying? So then that's when that discernment comes in, and so yeah, knowing how to broach certain conversations, that's important before you get to discernment, right? Knowing how to do those types of things, right? So that's what I have for y'all. Originally this video was like 20 minutes. It was like 20 minutes, but I got it down to size. Oh, I'm so mad. The first one didn't upload, but there's that on that. Okay, is it discernment or is it discrimination? That's what you got to ask yourself. Okay, are you discerning a situation or are you participating in your discrimination? All right, so we gotta figure that one out. And I think it's important, like I said too, in like finding your voice, right? And what's going to be required is like knowing yourself, knowing your individuality, and affirming that on a consistent basis. Hopefully I'm able to like utilize a description on this. I don't know, I can't recall if when you upload a live on YouTube, if you still get the option to have a description. If you do, please check out the description, because I have a few blog posts. It's thebrownperfection.com, where I talk about these things. And I'll go ahead and put them in the description, so that way you are aware and so that way, once you've done all the internal work, right, then you can start to assessing the external, because that's essentially what discernment is for, right? Once you've done the internal work, it'll help you to assess the external more appropriately, to where it is not shifting your internal world too much. All right, so thank y'all so much for watching. Check out my latest videos. Also, I'm the Brown Perfection across all platforms, except for Twitter. I think it's IMTBP on there. But anywho, like I said, if I can, I'll put the stuff in the description bar, and we'll leave it at that.